The Competitive Contractor podcast is brought to you by Shivendra & Co. Visit shivendra.com to find out how you can work with us to grow your construction business, be more profitable and be a competitive contractor.
Hi everyone, it's Shivendra Kumar welcoming you to the Competitive Contractor podcast, a podcast for owners and leaders of construction businesses globally. Throughout 2020 and 2021, the COVID-19 pandemic has given prominence to ongoing issues in the construction sector. As contractors struggle with issues like supply chain delays and rising costs, it's clear a new approach is needed. A new approach to leadership, a new approach to investments, a new approach to collaboration, and most certainly a new approach to engaging with our teams. For the competitive contractor, we know from past discussions, digital technology solutions can reduce the risk and be the difference between success and failure in today's uncertain construction market. Here to discuss these challenges, and as well as to challenge our thinking, is Tony Simonsson, Chief Operating Officer at Payapps. For your information, Payapps is a cloud-based technology to simplify the progress claims in the construction supply chain. In this podcast, Tony speaks about the role technology plays in promoting trust and collaboration. He also discusses how important courageous leadership and a no-complaint attitude are for success in 2022. So welcome everyone, and welcome Tony. It's great having you on this podcast finally. It's strange times, it's 2022 and a lot is happening. So welcome and keen to have this discussion with you today.
Thanks, Shiv. I'm delighted to be here. Actually, it's you're right. It is strange times, but hopefully we're starting to see an end to those strange times and we're moving into more positive opportunities moving forward.
Yeah, the word positive gets taken very negatively at this point.
It does. Good point.
But I guess COVID probably offers good and positive times for the construction industry.
It does.
Yeah. So on that note, how do you think the construction industry fared with challenges introduced by COVID-19? And what do you think has been the impact of COVID-19 on the industry?
It's certainly been interesting. I've been observing over the last 2 years. I feel almost like all I've done is manage through COVID. But for the industry, I think it'd be fair to say that COVID has exacerbated some of the issues that were already inherent in the industry, especially around supply costs, supply chain issues, and the challenges associated with simply building great projects. When we sort of quantify the cost to our economies and our countries, we've estimated roughly that the losses associated with construction are about $5 billion annually, which is a significant amount of money. But more importantly, there's been significant impacts to economies as well, where in Victoria alone, we saw almost $500 million in revenue per day and about $60 million worth of wages lost just as a result of having to, shut down projects because of the relative lockdowns in both Victoria and New South Wales. I think also one of the things we're going to see for sure is there's going to be cost increases for just the cost of doing business right across Australia. And the majority of those costs actually, I think, will be borne on the East Coast, where in Queensland, Brisbane, the Gold Coast, you're going to see increases in costs of somewhere between 5 and 6% potentially, which creates challenges both for builder and the organisations who are owning the buildings in the first place.
Yeah, I think cost is a big topic, and even on media, there's discussions now on the challenge and the struggles of construction businesses. So I think it's tense times for anyone in the construction industry. I think going past the lockdowns is probably giving some comfort right at the minute, especially when the case numbers are so high. I think it's positive that the industry at least can keep working, and particularly with the numbers. I didn't know those numbers, but if the cost of shutdown is that much, you can see the ripple effect of that on families and communities.
Correct, absolutely. We think about what happens within core construction, obviously, but there's a whole ecosystem of right around construction that is supported by construction that gets impacted as well. And that's not lost on us, that, people have been through some really challenging times. And, as I said in the beginning, we're really, really hoping to see that we're more towards the end of that and starting to move out towards, more positive outcomes.
Yeah, one of the joys I feel in my role is I work with small to medium sized construction businesses, and one of the good things is you get to work with businesses who are supporting local communities, local charities, and I think the impact of lockdowns and the impact of COVID has been felt not only by the construction companies but also on these local sports clubs, etc.
Oh, absolutely. I'm fortunate enough to serve on the board of a charity that supports homelessness right across Australia, and we have seen that, where we work very closely with industry, and industry support us in our endeavours to reduce homelessness as much as humanly possible. And we have seen where organisations have unfortunately had to pull back in their support, be it either financial or volunteering aspects, because of increased lockdowns or rules around contact, which have made things a little bit more difficult. And I'm, as you say, around sporting clubs and so on, I'm an active participant still in sport at my age, and I've involved in cricket in particular here in Sydney, and our sporting clubs have suffered a fair bit from the contribution from organisations where they would normally expect to see more positive outcomes.
Yeah, it's been significant, and I guess the full impact hasn't been seen yet, right? I think it's going to take some time to weave through it, but it's time to rebuild. It's a new year. It's a fresh start. We can put the past behind us. There's a lot of learnings and experiences that have come from it. So as countries rebuild and as the industry rides the wave of an increasing number of live projects, what do you think the industry should do to shape it for a more sustainable future?
I think there's a number of things it can do. We're going to see a building boom. We know that it's going to occur in both the residential housing market and larger infrastructure projects right across the countries, which is fantastic. We want to see that. That surge is going to create a little bit of a challenge, though, obviously, as we talked about, with supply chain challenges and resourcing challenges as well. Immigration has been very much minimised in the last 2 years, and so labour and labour costs potentially might be rising, associated with those shortages. But what I think is really important for organisations to think about is, whilst those challenges are in front of them, how can they look to reset their organisation or continue on the path that they may have already been on, around being a more productive, more efficient, more collaborative organisation, working more closely with all the stakeholders involved in their projects. Some of that may involve, using and leveraging technology to help solve the problem. Some of that may involve thinking about the way they do things and creating that more collaborative mindset. And I think certainly, where you've got the opportunity for change to occur, there's probably no better time than now to embrace that change and potentially to create a differentiator for yourself as an organisation in the market that perhaps is, charging ahead with doing things either a little bit or a lot differently to their competition.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And just to recap it for the audience, Tony mentioned that companies can be focusing more on productivity, on efficiency and collaborating, and technology probably as an enabler to all of that. And I think I like the bit that to say, yes, we've got challenges in front of us, but challenges are good opportunities to reinvent and to relook at the future. And if you have a unique solution, it might be your competitive advantage. The topic of collaboration is one that's very close to me, and one that we talk about a lot in construction. And you mentioned that. So there is this topic keeps coming up. It's a lingering issue in the construction industry. So how can collaboration, and let's just say the trust side between stakeholders, how can this be addressed for the industry to progress. And it's time that we move beyond this collaboration topic, right? It's a word that's been there in construction for a while, and it seems to reappear every so often. I feel that we can move on from this. It should just be the norm. So how do we progress on from this, Tony?
I think information and data does hold some of the key to this. There has to be obviously a willingness and a spirit to adopt change and do things differently for this to occur as well. And as you said before, there's a little bit of mistrust perhaps. And some of that mistrust may come from having inaccurate information that's being utilised in the day-to-day projects that are being undertaken by both, builder and subcontractor and all the stakeholders involved. We firmly believe in having a single source of truth of information, one set of data that is established and agreed upon by all the parties to utilise for their projects and their programs moving forward. So they're all working from the same piece of information. There's nothing's hidden, nothing's secret, nothing, certainly could be inaccurate, I should say. And really importantly, I think, there are some great digital technologies that have been coming to the marketplace to help support not just the provision, but the enablement of this single source of truth with all of the stakeholders, which I think is going to do a couple of things. First, as you say, it's about creating more of an area of trust that you can centre around rather than the perhaps mistrust around multiple pieces of information. But I also think it's about reducing risk. When we think about projects, we think about predictability, we think about the ability to forecast outcomes, and we think about how we might mitigate and reduce risk in any project. Single sources of truth, be it data, that let you centre around that one piece of accurate information can inherently reduce that risk in running any project. And I think what you can then see as a result, you're going to see an acceleration of growth, projects delivered on time every time, and perhaps, if what we want to really prevent is those disputes that sometimes occur when things get out of sync and when people tend to disagree around either outcomes or information or the way things are being done.
Yeah. Some might challenge you and say, hey, Tony, this is very philosophical. In construction industry, we often talk about the three truths. It's your side, it's my side, and the real truth.
Yes, that's right.
And often there is this fear among smaller contractors that if I share the truth, if I'm transparent, if I refer to the single source of truth as you referred to it, I could be reprimanded for sharing bad information, or I might not look as good, or I might not be looked in good view in front of the client, right?
Yes.
So when I look at this issue, I think it's collaboration to that next level. It's the understanding to say, yes, sometimes things go wrong. Sometimes things might not pan out to be as you've put it on your P6 or your project plan. What advice would you have for both contractors and clients in being able to, let's say, access the single source of truth, but being able to do it in a way that is collaborative, but encouraging, and not creating this negativity where people are trying to then hide because people don't share the truth because there's this fear of something, right?
Yeah, that's correct. Absolutely. And I think the early engagement and an establishment of the way you're going to work is critically important. We see this every single day. And in fact, I was speaking to a customer just yesterday around how adopting a different approach, which was to be transparent and open in the way they run their projects and collaborate with their stakeholders, has reduced risk, but also reduced the amount of disputes that could occur by significant percentages. Now, those disputes have a couple of different outcomes, don't they? Obviously, there's a potential financial cost, but there's an administrative cost as well that creates a burden on both companies to produce information to go and prove their case. With a single source of truth, one single source of information that they are collaborating around, they're all operating off the same piece of information. But both organisations also get to agree around that too, right? And that's the important piece around the upfront conversation. How are we going to do things? How are we going to configure this information to get the best result for both of us? Agreed up front. Then the rules of engagement, if you want to call it that, are used right throughout the project, and they are then consistent. And so you've got an expectation of absolute consistency rather than potentially that worrying about, I get to the end of this and I'm not really sure what's going to be the outcome. I think predictability, as we said, becomes then very, very important. And I think, as we've talked about a little bit earlier, we know that most of the organisations out there, in fact, half of organisations in construction that we talk to, be they customers or prospects, want to use digital transformation in some way to help improve the relationships they have with their subcontractors and the stakeholders around them, so they can see that there's a benefit, they can see that there's an opportunity to engage in a different way, and they can see that the opportunity to be open, transparent, and utilize the technology to enable that is right in front of them. So embracing that change will be critically important.
Yeah, I love your response. I think the early engagement.
Thank you.
It's almost it's like it's your vaccination equivalent for COVID-19.
It
right?
is. Absolutely.
We find earlier on in the piece, before problems have happened, when the relationship's all good, and you sort of gear yourself and you put this barrier around yourself to say, if problems were to happen, at least you've got all these discussions and guidelines and agreements in place. When I say agreements, it's not formal documents, it's a way of working that you've agreed to. So those problems can be managed, and it prevents the cost of disputes is going to be multiple times bigger, I guess, compared to the pain of communicating and having a discussion around a poor result. But let's go on to the topic of technology, right? Because yes. I know when we talk technology in construction businesses, there is some sort of reluctance. I come across many businesses which have got technology investments and digital transformation sitting in their budgets, but there's this hesitation to progress those initiatives forward. What advice would you offer to leaders of such businesses?
I'd say, embrace the opportunity that's in front of us with the tools that collectively can bring about a different level of change for most organisations nowadays. So, I actually believe that a lot of organisations want to do this. Some are hesitant because they might have experienced projects that have failed in the past, and I think there are some statistics that say that greater than 50% of large IT projects don't succeed. I would counter that by saying that perhaps they don't succeed because of not good planning, for example. But there's probably that fear that some of those projects have either not succeeded the way they wanted to, they've overrun, they've run long, or perhaps they don't give the outcome that was expected in the first place. Back to the principle of the builder and the subcontractors and stakeholders working closely together, I think the organisations like ours that work closely with our customers on bringing the solution into the organisation need to work, though very collaboratively at the early stages to ensure success at the end. That's critically important. So there's a level of trust that needs to be established very early to make sure that we see success at the back end. I think also that a lot of the construction industry has relied on very traditional tools, Microsoft Word, handwritten documents, Excel, and those sorts of technologies to do what we see in our world of progress claims between the subcontractor and the builder. Now, that might have been fine when they were small organisations. That might have been fine when they were doing a very small number of projects. But as volume increases, and as we talked about before, we will see a boom in both residential housing and infrastructure. The need for technology to enable that process is going to be more and more critical. I think we can agree that, there's a large percentage of Excel spreadsheets that probably contain mistakes as well. And we don't want to see that occur, because that then talks to that issue we discussed previously around risk, around having accurate information to either prove or disprove points. So I think a more robust and reliable source of information and truth is critically important for these organisations to remove the opportunity for human error, and probably think about embracing doing things differently to then leverage those scarce resources for often more important activities in their business as well.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with you, and I think there's a couple of things that are changing, and you can qualify that given that you are in the technology space yourself. Number one, I think in the past, doing a technology project would mean a 12-month-long software integration implementation, which takes forever, and you don't see what's happening until it goes live. I think today's world operates very differently. It's almost like, I'd say almost like plug and play for most
Yes.
of the applications. The other thing I'm starting to notice, and again, you can qualify this, is there's a lot more. Previously, it was software companies that were coming into construction. Now we are seeing the onset of more construction companies which are offering technology solutions, or construction specialists who have worked or developed applications through their experience. And I think that's a very positive change, because construction operates differently. You can't apply something that works in manufacturing into construction outright. It needs its own way of doing things. So I think that's a big change.
Oh, definitely. I think on the first point, the cloud has changed everything. So software as a service, which is consumed by organizations, has changed the game in terms of the way we would traditionally bring solutions into a customer. We don't implement anything. We don't do any implementation. We onboard a customer onto our platform. They're typically up and running in less than a month's period of time, typically then realizing the benefits of the case that they built, to deploy the solution in the first place. So that time to productivity is rapidly reduced. You talked before about software implementation projects that can take 12 months. With those sorts of projects, it would then take that period of time to realize any benefit to the organization. We can immediately see result. And to your point about taking 12 months to see the benefit, the cool thing about software as a service in the cloud is that the almost immediate benefits are right in front of you. And I think that's critically important for organizations today, where we obviously want to help enable change. We want to give them the confidence that in driving that change, there's going to be a positive benefit to their customer, to their employees and their business. And we work very, very, very hard to achieve that. I think the other thing too, which is an important point here, Shiv, is that our industry, construction, from a technology point of view, has sometimes got a bit of a bad rap about being slow to adopt technology to bring about change. Now, I'd actually would counter that. I work with many organisations, large, medium and small, who have leveraged technology in some way to bring about fundamental change in their business. They've identified a problem, they've chosen a solution, and they've either implemented, deployed, or onboarded that solution to get a positive outcome. And be that in their financial world, be that in their employee world, be that in their construction management world, there are plenty of great examples of where positive outcomes have existed. And so I want to be a champion for the industry if I can, by giving them a real pat on the back, because many have embraced that. And I think, as we said right at the start too, that what COVID is going to do, whilst it's exacerbated some of the underlying issues, it will force us to be faster about the way we go about doing things and driving that change, and perhaps using technology really to bring about a change in the way we do things.
Yeah, that's very encouraging. I'd say, I think to acknowledge the companies that have embraced technology, and to mention that there are many examples where they've done well, I think is a message for those who are, let's say, hesitating to say, hey, there's many who have done. Yes, we might hear of the bad stories, but there's so many good stories, and I can relate to so many from the companies that I've worked with. There's so many good case studies. And I guess it brings us to the next point, which is which I wanted to talk with you specifically, is around mindset, right? Because mindset of leaders will play a big role in providing certainty and peace of mind to clients and employees in a volatile climate like right now.
Yeah.
And it's not only, I mean, we talk about COVID-19, the resurgence of it, but there are environmental issues, what's happening in the Pacific Islands. We've got all the political issues with elections coming up here in Australia, and there's so much of discussion on various different topics around the world. And of course, all the social and the activism that's happening. How, as a leader, in the industry, but also of an emerging business, how do you plan to approach 2022?
With continued courage, I think is the short version. I think what the last couple of years in particular have shown us is that those organisations that can manage and thrive through adversity will come out of that adversity being stronger. We worked incredibly hard on engaging our people and our customers all throughout the challenges we've faced in both 20 and 21. We did that through all sorts of different ways, but the critical piece was that continued conversation, collaboration, engagement, and ensuring people understood exactly where we're at was so important. You know, we are fortunate to be in an industry that, whilst it went through cycles, did continue to have some really positive elements to it. Our business also through that period of time took on board investment from external organisations to help us grow as well, which was critically important in the way we serve our customers. And so that helped immensely in that, not just engagement, but how we serve them with our technologies and solutions. I think the other important things to be thinking about then, other than courageous leadership and that willingness to embrace the change, are to look at our organisations, the makeup of our organisations, and how perhaps the needs of our employees and our potential employees are going to change. We know that there is incredible diversity in all of our workforces. In fact, I'd say to you, there's probably 5 generations potentially now in our workforces, right through from baby boomers through to the X's, Y's, etc., which I think all have differing needs. And so to be able to ensure that our employees are getting what they want from an organisation around development and opportunity is important. Ensuring we understand what our customers need on a daily, weekly, monthly, yearly basis is critically important. And I think then that how we are able to then look around us and see what's changing and be able to quickly evaluate and react to that is important as well. There is no sense sitting there and complaining about the fact that COVID and the pandemic and other issues are preventing us from doing things. If you choose to do that, you probably aren't going to grow and prosper. If you sit there and evaluate what that is doing to your business and put in place strategies that will mitigate those challenges, and in fact maybe take advantage. We talked about how the pandemic has shone a light on certain issues. So understand, identify how you might overcome them and move forward with courageous decision making, but with solid execution, will be important for leaders, I think, very much so.
Yeah, brilliant. You had a theme going on there, I noticed. It was all on peace. Maybe it's to do with because you mentioned continued courage. Then you mentioned change in terms of understanding the changing needs of employees, your workforce, which is critical, I think, in these times.
Yes.
Also, the change around your customers. So I think the continued courage and change, embracing change, is the C's that people need to do. you mentioned also a C that people should not do, which is don't complain.
Correct.
Just move on with it, right? I think the external is going to change. These whatever is happening is beyond us to stop. So I think it's just
Correct.
continue with the courage and leadership. So that's brilliantly stated with the C.
Thank you
Team. I
so
don't know if
much.
you noticed that or not.
I can add one more C for you,
Go
which
for
is,
it.
I tend to focus on, my, sphere of control and influence, and the things that I can't either control or influence, I can't worry about. I need to know and understand them, but I can only do, what I can do with our organisation to get the best outcome for our stakeholders, be it our customers and our employees in particular. And if I can focus on that, execute well, taking into account everything that's around us, ultimately we should be happy with the outcome.
Brilliant. Another C, control what you can control.
There you go. That's exactly right.
Yeah. So on that note, what role do you see Payapps playing in the construction industry going forward?
I think there's a couple of different roles. I think there's an opportunity to educate, for sure. I will often say that when I look at the market that's in front of us, you have to either fill a market or create a market. They're the two things that organisations like us do. I think the market is there for us to help grow into, but I think we have to play a strong role in education around how things can be done differently, education perhaps in how we can help our builders and our subcontractors collaborate more effectively, education perhaps around the notion of the single version of the truth and how that can play a role in not just being more efficient and more productive, but possibly reduce that, the cost of disputes and etc. moving forward. So I think that's certainly one role we must play for sure. I think the second part is that an enablement around using technology to improve the way our organisation works. We can do that over and over again with organisations, and I think by playing that role, by ensuring that we help enable them to be more effective, more efficient, get great outcomes, utilising our technology, we can only then get a better outcome, not just for the customer, but perhaps their ecosystem around them and more broadly the industry. So I take our role, I feel it's very important for those two things, and we take it obviously very seriously. And we want to make sure that we use platforms like yourselves to help this education process that we feel is critically important.
Yeah. Again, a brilliant response. And I like it. I think in a nutshell, what you've said is just educating the industry and I would say the broader market that, hey, there's a better, more efficient, more smart way of doing things, right?
Yes.
And with benefits for all stakeholders. So I think that's really well stated. And one of the reasons for starting the podcast is that. So you've correctly stated that at the end. It's what I picked up from my experience is, and the way I'd like to state is to say there's a lot of knowledge, construction industry knowledge that's buried in the graveyards.
There is.
What we are trying to do, and what I think your mission also is to be able to impart that knowledge, share that, so it stays and helps the industry grow, because there's just so much more for us to contribute to building the society. And we've seen in COVID times that this industry alone has kept the economy going. Hence, the government was spending so much money. It's shown how important we as an industry are to nation building, and not only in Australia. We've seen that in so many countries around the world. So it's a big piece, and I'm just so happy to hear that you've also got the focus on education, because I think with that we can bring up possibly a new revolution of how construction gets done in the future. So thanks for sharing that.
That's okay. I think the other thing I'd probably say is our joint roles. I think leveraging organisations like your own that focus on a best practice approach to helping organisations either be more efficient, more productive, more profitable, to be able to sort of take their business from, start to being something that is contributing significantly in the industry is really important. The sort of work that, you do, which I'm always interested in, is critically important to helping organisations, large, medium, and small, get a great outcome. So well done on that. I should be saying that because I think that's important. The number of people that rely upon great advice and coaching and counsel to do that is probably growing, especially in these really tough times.
Yeah, it's every percent, every degree counts at this time. So before we finish this podcast, Tony, where can people get more information about Payapps and the topics we've discussed today, as well as a little bit more about you? Where can people find more information?
Absolutely. So payapps.com is the best place. So the website contains a wealth of information. We're also very active on LinkedIn and all the social channels, importantly. We're working really, really hard to bring content to the market that helps educate as well. And so you'll see far more from us around that. We're using programs and platforms like this with associated blogs that contain great information and probably some insights that we've got, from an industry point of view to help promote and enable that information as well. We've conducted a number of surveys, done a number of white papers over the last couple of years that I think are all valuable sources of information. For me, I'm very quite active in the social world, especially as it relates to LinkedIn, Twitter, and Instagram. Tony Simonsson is my handle. Easy to find. I think people would probably find more about triathlon and training on my Instagram if they went searching rather than construction. But I do find that tools like LinkedIn create an opportunity for engagement and collaboration and education, and it perhaps can be a little bit underused at times as well. So you'll see us over the next 12 months probably do a far better job of that as well.
That's fantastic, and I'm happy that you're sharing all this information for free on your website for everyone
Absolutely.
to benefit from. Tony, any message for the audience as you finish off? Any lessons from triathlon that you would like to share with everyone?
Well, I did have my sales team actually asked me to spend time with them late last year, and the ask was around goal setting, and I was for a little while thinking about what's the message I want to give about goal setting, and I actually decided to relate it to what I do in my personal world around sport. I embarked upon this, idea in January last year of taking on board a half Ironman, and for me that was quite a significant leap from where I'd been, and to get to something like that in 12 months is a lot of hard work, a lot of training, but you breaking things down into achievable goals over periods of time was the message, and celebrating success along the way was as important as well. We all get hard on ourselves if our business doesn't perform as we would like, and I'm just as hard on myself if I'm not training as well as I would like, or perhaps not getting the outcomes. So not being too hard on ourselves, but setting achievable goals that we, regularly look at to really then embrace that long-term goal was critically important. So, I think that's you can translate the world of business and sport and other things there as a very, very common thing when we think about what we want to achieve in both our personal lives and our work lives.
Yeah, I'm glad I asked the question, because that's sort of okay. where this positivity about the industry comes from. For someone who's conquered a half Ironman in 12 months, you sort of go into beast mode, right? Anything's doable if you follow that same methodology. So
you do good. Yeah. It's actually about training and preparation can get you anywhere. It's quite interesting how when people ask you, that's often the common question is, well, how do you do that? It's such a long way, and it's 6 or 7 hours of sustained effort. But the reality is, it's the training you do that sets you up for that success. And I think when you think about it as it relates to our industry, training, development, great goal setting, along the way for our organisations, it's a very parallel thing.
Yeah, and it comes back to the question to say, how much effort are you spending time training to be a leader? How
Correct.
much you spend investing on putting that life mask on yourself before you put it on others?
Absolutely correct.
Now. So, and I appreciate, Tony, that you've very openly shared your insights with us and are supporting the industry. Not just supporting, I think you've been very out there talking about topics and bringing those conversations into life, as well as I think just in this conversation, I picked up that you're leading by example with stuff that you're doing. So thanks very much for joining us. Your insights will help owners and leaders of construction companies grow, be more profitable, and become the competitive contractor. Wish you and the Payapps team all the best for 2022.
Thank you so much, Shiv. Thank you for having us. It's been a delight, and we'd love to come back at some point through the year and touch base on how things are going and what we're seeing in the industry over time.
Brilliant. We'll be happy to have you back.
Thank you,
maybe
Shiv.
another half Ironman done.
I hope so. There we go. If we do it after June, I will have one done. There we go.
Brilliant. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Shiv. Bye-bye.
Thank you for joining us on this episode of the Competitive Contractor Podcast. If you want to grow your construction business and be more profitable, book a complimentary consultation through Shavendra.com. Our commitment is to impact you and your business positively and be a competitive contractor.